Okay, now what you've been waiting for a whole year are compulsory notifications. So save your applause until the end. Okay. I'll be covering civil rights, confidentiality of student records, and our anti-bullying policy. Linda Maniglia, our Director of Student Services, will review physical restraint policies, and Freya Leahy, our Adjustment Council Director, will speak on mandated reporting, and Tim Wells, our Technology Director, will speak on internet protocols. Okay, starting with civil rights. Okay, I'm not going to read the laws. I'm just going to read a summary of how it pertains to Rockland Public Schools. The first one is Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. We cannot exclude anyone from participating in programs or activities based on race, color, or national origin. The Equal Educational Opportunities Act of 1974. All students at Rockland Public Schools have the right to equal educational opportunities no matter what race, color, sex, or national origin they are. Title IX of the Education Amendments of 1972 prohibits discrimination, exclusion from participation, and denial of benefits based on sex in educational programs and activities. We cannot exclude students from educational programs and activities based on their sex. Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 prohibits discrimination, exclusion from participation, and denial of benefits based on disability in programs or activities. We cannot exclude students from participating in activities based on a disability. Title II of the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990. We cannot exclude students from participation or deny benefits on the basis of disability. The Individuals with Disabilities Education Act of 2004. This act governs special education programs relative to assistance and services. And our newest one, the Every Student Succeeds Act of 2015. Federal funding must be appropriated for improving achievement of the disadvantaged, professional development for teachers, family engagement, language instruction for English learners, and education for the homeless. Okay, on to confidentiality of student records. Student records are confidential, and this includes home addresses and telephone numbers. And what is confidentiality? In addition to students' addresses, names, and phone numbers, it includes parents' names and other family members' personal identifiers, such as social security numbers and student numbers. The exception would be for a directory information unless the parent has refused to have this information released. Confidentiality applies to discussions both verbal and written. Things to think about are who, what, where, and why. Who or who is listening, who could be listening, who or what is being discussed, where is the discussion taking place, and why is the discussion taking place. The discussion should occur in a private place, such as a teacher's classroom, should not be discussed in a public place. Confidentiality could be violated if conversations take place in such areas as school halls, the playground, busy teachers' lounges, or through social media. Legitimate educational sharing. There's no problem with confidentiality if the parties to the discussion are school officials with legitimate educational interest, and the information will help them work with the child. Discussions of gossiping about students or families regarding non-educational issues violates confidentiality. Privacy of educational records. Students' records, files, documents, and other materials which contain information directly related to a student are confidential. Individual education plans must be maintained in a secure setting. Emails are public records. Therefore, be sensitive to violations of confidentiality when sending emails. The Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. Most health-related records kept in schools are subject to the Family Education Rights and Privacy Act. Our anti-bullying policy. Rockland Public Schools will not tolerate any unlawful or disruptive behavior, including any form of bullying, cyberbullying, or retaliation in our school buildings or on school grounds, or in school-related activities, and we will take prompt action to end that behavior and restore the student that is being bullied, who is also referred to as the target, a sense of safety. The policy is on our website, and for more information, you can read it on the website, and also principals will review the policy in more detail with their staffs. What is bullying? In brief, it is the repeated use by one or more students of a written, verbal, or electronic expression, or a physical act or gesture, or any combination thereof directed at a target that causes physical or emotional harm to the target or damage to the target's property, places the target in reasonable fear of harm to him or herself or damage of him or her property. It creates a hostile environment for the target, which is when the bullying causes the school environment to permeate with intimidation, ridicule, or insult that is sufficiently severe or pervasive to alter the conditions of a student's education. It infringes on the rights of the target at school or materially and substantially disrupts the education process or the orderly operation of a school. This includes cyberbullying, which means bullying through the use of technology or any electronic communication. If any staff member suspects bullying, make an oral report to administration. All accusations will be investigated. Thank you. Linda Maniglia will now review our physical restraint policies.
So I'm presenting a brief, and I'll try to be very brief, overview of the Massachusetts restraint and seclusion regulations and procedures. So Mass regulations were updated and actually went into effect as of January 1st, 2016. And this training must be viewed by all educators annually, and it's now referred to the prevention of physical restraint and requirements if used. So this state regulation governs the use of physical restraint on students in all public school districts, charter schools, collaboratives, and approved special education schools. And the goal is to make sure that every student is safe and that restraint is only used in emergency situations and as a last resort. So some of the changes to this law include a revised definition of restraint, the addition of timeout terminology, prone restraint is prohibited, and there's revised and additional reporting requirements when a restraint is used. So physical restraint is prohibited unless a student's behavior poses a threat of assault or serious physical harm to either themselves or others, or when the student is not responsive to verbal directives or less intrusive positive interventions. So the new definition of physical restraint is direct physical contact that prevents or significantly restricts a student's freedom of movement. Providing brief physical contact to ensure student safety, or redirecting by guiding the student, or providing comfort to students that are really distressed is acceptable. Physical escort, on the other hand, is just a temporary touching or holding. Usually it's the hand, a wrist, shoulder, or the back, and it is without force. And again, a physical escort is permissible. So to summarize, brief physical contact to promote student safety, providing physical guidance, redirecting a student, providing comfort, or a physical escort without force is okay. So as I stated earlier, all staff must receive a general training regarding the use of restraint every year. In addition, specific staff identified by building administrators must participate in in-depth training and the use of physical restraint to make sure that we're administrating restraint safely and properly. Students, family, and school staff play a role in restraint and prevention of it. Students must be aware of school rules and codes of conduct. We should really make sure that our families understand the school rules and codes of conduct, and staff, maybe during PAC meetings or conferences or open house, should reiterate to parents and students, if they're there, what our school rules are, our codes of conduct, and let them know too that it is in our student handbooks. Staff must also inform a principal as soon as possible when they've used a restraint with a student. And in addition, written detailed report must be given to the building principal within one school working day of when you restrained a student. So Rockland School District's stance on physical restraint is that we use it with students to ensure their safety, only in emergency situations, and it should be done by trained personnel. All incidents where physical restraint, holds, or escorts are used, staff must follow the district procedures and the written reports and reporting mandates. So there is a difference between seclusion and timeout. Seclusion means involuntary confinement of a student, and a student should never be left anywhere without a staff member monitoring or being close by. Whereas timeout is a temporary separation from a learning environment, and it's usually to provide the student with an opportunity to de-escalate and calm down before going back to the classroom. So if a student is removed from the instructional area due to escalated behaviors, that is considered a timeout. Students in a timeout space must be monitored all of the time that they're in that area, and the timeout space must be clean and safe. If a timeout period lasts longer than 20 to 30 minutes, you must notify your building administrator right away, and then also confer with your administrator and kind of seek their guidance as to whether the restraint should be continued or stopped, okay? And again, time out should be always used as a supportive strategy, whereas seclusion is prohibited. At all times, staff should use preventative strategies as soon as a student starts to exhibit escalated behaviors. DESE supports the use of positive interventions, behavior supports, our PBIS that we use here in the district, any evidence-based programs such as responsive classrooms, second steps, restorative justice, all right? So the emphasis should always be on the positive. All staff should be familiar with students that have behavior support plans, IEPs, or 504s, so that we make sure that we're implementing any accommodations with fidelity. The new language or the new regs state explicitly that you cannot include physical restraint in a written IEP, a 504, or a student's behavior support plan. And during crisis intervention, it is advised that we limit our language with a student, because sometimes, you know, continually talking to a student that's already agitated just makes them more upset. And also to remember to use like maybe a timeout space where the student can de-escalate, or again, a physical escort is permissible. Other types of restraints that are prohibited are a mechanical restraint, which is where a student is strapped either into a chair or somewhere that they're unable to have freedom of movement. Medication restraints, giving them sedatives or any kind of medication. seclusion, and also prone restraint, where a child is laying on the floor face down, is prohibited as well. The reason restraint is used as a last resort is to make sure that we can eliminate risk to both our students and staff during a restraint. If restraint is used, it is a good idea to use a team approach. Again, if restraint lasts more than 20 to 30 minutes, you must notify your building administrator and then, get guidance from them as to whether or not to continue that physical restraint. All restraints must be reported. A staff member must notify your building administrator as soon as possible and put it in detailed written report the following school day. The principals or the building administrators must notify a parent about a restraint that has occurred within 24 hours, and this is done verbally, and then the building administrators need to follow up with a detailed written report within 3 school working days. And parents or students can have an opportunity to write a comment or whatever they want in regards to the report that is sent home. When possible, as educators, we should always be aware of any students that have a history of trauma or have medical or psychological limitations so that we have a baseline with these students. When restraint is used, you want to make a point of meeting with that child and any other students that may have been in the area when the restraint was taking place, kind of have a discussion with the student or students and kind of talk about how that situation could have been avoided and how that they can avoid the same situation in the future. Here at Rockland, we use the Crisis Prevention Institute Nonviolent Crisis Training Program, the CPI. And when members are trained, principals will generate a list of all the trained personnel so that you will know who to contact when necessary. So again, to summarize, the regulations have been updated. We want to use physical restraint as a last resort and only to ensure the safety of students. And time out is a positive strategy that we can use with our students to kind of give them an opportunity to de-escalate and calm down. Seclusion is prohibited and should not be used at all. Again, no student should ever be left in any room or environment unattended. And make sure that you know your team and your respective buildings that have taken the in-depth training and know how to contact them if necessary. Okay? So thank you. And I think we're going to be putting this on the website as well. And now I'd like to introduce Freya Leahy, and she will be doing mandated reporting.
Morning, welcome back. I'm Freya Leahy, Adjustment Counselor. There's not much great about me being up here because I talk about child abuse. However, I'm a glass half full kind of girl, so I have good news. The good news for you is that there's only one more presenter after me, and the good news for me is that it's Tim Wells, and that means I don't have to go after him. So we're all mandated reporters to report abuse or neglect by a caretaker of a child under the age of 18. we have to report that abuse or neglect to the Department of Children and Families. Again, little good news is that we're not mandated reporters in our personal lives. We're reporters in our roles as professionals only. I'm just going to quickly give you some definitions. Abuse is defined by DCF as the non-accidental commission of an act by a caretaker that causes or creates a substantial risk of physical or emotional harm. This includes sexual offense. Known cases of domestic violence also need to be reported. Neglect is defined by the department as failure of a caretaker, either deliberate or through the negligence or inability to take those actions necessary to provide a child with minimally adequate food, clothing, shelter, medical care, supervision, emotional stability, and growth or other essential care. And a caretaker is defined as any person entrusted with the responsibility for a child's health and welfare both in and out of the home. This includes parents, step-parents, foster parents, guardians, relatives, teachers, daycare providers, cafeteria workers, bus drivers, all of us. Additionally, if a student, so this is a quote from DCF, if a student is being sexually assaulted, abused, or exploited by another student, the matter should be reported to DCF. This is a newer and grayer area, and there are certain to be questions. But the goal is, if there's a question, bring it to an administrator. Any and all questions of abuse or neglect should be brought to building principals, adjustment counselors as soon as possible, immediately, really. Whether it's in the middle of teaching a class, whatever it is, just please don't wait till the end of the school day or till the next day or till the next week. As soon as you have that gut and you're feeling that something's not right, please have a conversation with administration. School Resource Officer Ethan Schnabel is also a great resource. If you take one thing away from today, it's time is of the essence. Just don't wait. If you feel like it needs to be talked about, please do. So any question about a student's safety or well-being, whether it's a conversation you heard by a student, an unexplained injury, or a student's report of being abused or neglected, again, must be reported. It's not our job to determine whether or not the abuse or neglect happened. It's just our job to report it. So we don't have to investigate. We don't need more information. We just need to know what we know and to report it. Along the same line, if for any reason you're concerned for student safety and feel that they may be at risk to themselves, please bring it to the attention of your school administration, adjustment counselor, guidance counselor, or psychologist. Watch for changes in behavior, mood, appearance, significant drop in performance or participation. Also, at the high school level, even in the middle school level, unfortunately, signs of cutting in students. These can all be indicators that a child could be at risk to themselves or is being abused or neglected. If a student seems off for any reason, it's worthy of a conversation. Please do not hesitate to contact me at the high school or any adjustment counselors in your own building. Thanks so much.
Thanks for that introduction, Free. Appreciate it. Mr. Sham, Mark, still here? Alan, we need to replace those placards that got ripped off the walls as you come in here, the ones that say no food or drink allowed, right? It's a beautiful facility. Dave, feel free to speak up.
I agree with you, Tim.
No, nobody's got anything. I didn't see anything. Well, you guys have been talked at for 3 days now, right? I'm going to keep this really short, I promise. Dan Biggins left. Last year, he mentioned something about positivity as a choice. I used that statement all year, all last year. I thought that was an awesome statement. He really hit the nail on the head. Positivity is a choice. But I'm not here to talk about this. What Colleen had to talk about. What Linda had to tell you guys about. Thank you guys for doing that, man. That is tough. That's tough. I'm here to talk about your internet presence, okay? We all have it, right? You guys were hired. This is a great place to work. I know you've heard that 1,000 times. I'm serious. This is a great place to work. I really mean that. If I didn't think it was a great place to work, I wouldn't say anything. I would just drone on about what I'm supposed to talk about. But I really do think that this is a great place to work. Alan, Colleen, your principals, they all have a tough job to do, and I think they do it really, really well. Your department heads, they have a tough job to do. So this being a great place to work, you guys, they hit the lottery in Watertown this year. You guys have hit the employment lottery, I think, by being hired by Rockland Public Schools, and I really mean that. For those of us that have been here for a few years, sometimes we need to be reminded of that fact also, especially the guys and the ladies that were born and raised in Rockland. They know that this is a great place to work. I'm from a neighboring town, and I really believe that this is a great place to work, honestly. So you guys you got hired by the principals and maybe the department heads or whoever hired you. Thank you, to the maintenance, custodial, secretaries. Second year in a row, technology was left off. We're not bitter. You guys got hired by, the best here. I'm assuming that they hired you because you're intelligent, mature, smart. You got all the prerequisite requirements that you're supposed to have. Maybe a few exceptions. Don't be foolish with your internet. You might think that only your friends see it. Chris and I got better things to do than creep and stalk you guys. So be aware of what you post. It might be seen by people that you don't think are going to see it. I'm not here to lecture you. You're adults. You all know what is right and what's wrong. And I swear we all want to see 37 pictures of your baby eating. It's awesome. It really is. We might not want, or the parents that you guys will be teaching might not want to see, your 4th of July sunglasses, hat at the beach with an adult beverage in your hand. They might not. Maybe they will. This is Rockland after all. Maybe they will. If I say it enough, you'll believe it. This is really a great place to work. So I'm going to close. I said I was going to be quick. I'm going to close in the most direct way that I can say it is don't be stupid. Don't be an idiot. It's the internet. Not everything is true on it. All right? Just use your head, use your common sense. All right? Welcome. This is awesome. Thank you.
Okay, we'd like to thank our technology department. Tim and Chris for all the hard work you do all year. And Lisa. Okay, before I forget, don't forget to sign in at the tables on Main Street. This is